Hello and welcome back. My name is Alisa, for those who are new here, and I am a film and animation student living in Milan. Given that I have already gone through my first semester and finished my first exam session, I thought that today I would take the chance to actually tell the whole unbiased truth about what it means to be studying film and animation in the University of NABA. And I'm going to tell you all about my first semester lessons from start to finish. What can you expect from a film school in Italy? Because my course is called a bachelor's in film and animation, the way it works is that we're supposed to have lessons that cover both the cinematography and the animation subjects during the first year. This way, we are able to choose which is the path that best suits us for the following 2 years. So during the first semester, I had 7 different subjects that were focused exclusively on writing and filmmaking. The first subject I'm going to be talking about is storytelling, and this is exactly what it sounds like. We delved into what makes a good story. It encompassed themes such as character development, world building, story archetypes, as well as what makes a good dialogue. I think that the subject is pretty much universal, whether it is you're drawn to film or animation or just simple creative writing. Personally, this subject helped me a lot as a writer in developing my novel and realizing the direction in which my characters and plot were taking me. This was one of the subjects where each lesson we were given an assignment. They were pretty random and required you to think on your feet and very much lean into your creativity. But all in all, it was one of the chill subjects, so it gets a 6 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. Scriptwriting, I think for many, was one of their favorite subjects. For me, definitely. I mean, the material delved much deeper into how to create the story that actually matters and will resonate with the audience. If in storytelling, we were focused more on the idea itself, here we delved more deeply into how to actually transform it into a finished product. There was a lot of emphasis on story structure, specifically the 3-act structure, making every scene stand out and move the action forward, how to format a script in the right way, and how to actually make money as a scriptwriter. This subject also required you to put in the extra work and handling the assignments, which were basically writing script after script after script until you finally got it right. In terms of difficulty, this class was as much theoretical as it was practical, so I will give it a solid 8 out of 10. But I feel like I cannot move on without mentioning this, because I feel like this class would have not reached the level of importance that it did were it not for the teacher. You could see how invested he was in the subject, and he just managed to connect with everyone. And I swear I am not making this up, but there were moments where he would just say something that was so on point that you could see half of the class typing in their computers at the same time. History of cinema. It's not that I didn't like it, because I am a huge history fan. My grandmother is a history teacher, and I always knew that if I didn't study film, then I end up studying history instead. But history of cinema is really grueling in the sense that we have to start from the very beginning, back when cinema was just a silent, uncoordinated movement of shapes. All of the lectures were 3 hours long, and it was just my luck that I always had them at sunset. And I know I am not alone in this, but I just fall asleep. And especially when I am put into a dark room and asked to watch a black and white silent screen. Good news is that it did get better once we progressed into the 20th century and reached the sound and color films. In terms of homework, this was the most bulky subject we had. The professor had assigned a filmography of 40 films that would depict all the different stages and styles that film went through. So we had Italian films, German, Russian, Japanese, and other international cinema. Apart from that, we were also asked to read a book on history of cinema, which was around 100 pages, 1,000 pages long. So in terms of difficulty, this is going to get a 9 out of 10 because yes, this is a lot, but it is still all mainly theoretical.
Definitely want a family. Boys though, lots of boys.
Theory and analysis of film is part of the history of cinema branch. So it is a completely different subject, but our grade stems mostly from our work in history of cinema and whatever input we have in here. Despite the overly complicated name, this was one of the simplest subjects we had. Even though our lectures were mostly 3 hours long, all we did was watch movies that we then had to analyze and talk about in class. We mostly focused on Italian neorealism, which at times made the theme and the plot of the movies very hard to decipher. But I feel like this happened in a lot of the other assignments too, because the professors would purposefully make it harder on us than it should be. So in terms of difficulty, this still gets a 7 out of 10 because through this course, I have realized that so often we know what we saw, we know what we want to say, but it's so hard to sometimes find the right words to explain ourselves. Sound design foundations. This phase is of someone who suffers. I think it's obvious that this is the hardest lesson that we had until now. And I think all of my classmates would agree with me on this. And for no other reason than just because it covers such a specific subject like sound design. For those who do not know, there is a reason that film is an audio-visual medium, because when you watch a film, there is the visual part and then there is the audio part. And until I actually started studying sound design, I did not realize how much of the audio part of the film that we hear in the finished product is actually sound effects that are recreated backstage after everything is already filmed. But to simplify this for you, what a sound designer does is put together the final track for a movie, which will more than often include multiple dialogue tracks, music, and the sound effects. An important part of his job is to make sure that all of these complement each other in a way that sounds realistic. In terms of difficulty, this gets a solid 10 out of 10 because this was both practical and theoretical. We had to learn how to use a sound design software, namely Reaper. And on the theoretical side, there was just tons of sound history that covered how the first sound was ever recorded. But there was definitely a more scientific part to it, which explained how sound actually works, how a wave of sound travels through the air, and it was definitely stemmed in physics and required a couple of mathematical formulas. So yeah, many of my classmates even decided to not take the exam the first session and move it to a later date so they give themselves more time to study. Sound recording. This was the second subject that was kind of related to sound, but luckily it was mostly practical. We learned all about how to record sound, so what kind of equipment we need, how to hold a boom, and how to set up lavalier mics like the one I'm wearing, just more advanced. In terms of difficulty, it was fairly straightforward, so it gets a 7 out of 10, only because holding a boom is so much more difficult than I ever thought it would be. Last but not least is camera operation techniques, which was a 4-hour weekly lecture. We started off a little dull because for the first 2 days we had to cover a lot of theory, and that was quite hard to swallow. But then the fun part started. We would be given group assignments to film certain scenes and left to our own devices for 4 hours. Some would have to be actors, while others took care of the lighting and the camera. This subject was really the one that gave us the insight onto how it would be to really work in a real film set and work with professional gear. In terms of difficulty, it will get an 8 out of 10 because it did have some theory to go with it, all about lighting, exposure. Don't get me started. But also, for the people who have never used a camera before, it was a bit of a rough start, including me. And this is all for me today. This is what my first semester looked like, and I hope that this information helps you in choosing what it is that you want to do. And although I am not sponsoring the university, I will leave a link to their site down below for those who are curious. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you again very soon.